We've often been left with many strange mysteries that still remain unsolved. Fortunately, some of these events have been brought to a close, often in very unique ways. Number 5. In late September of 2016, 71-year-old Barbara Briley and her 5-year-old great-granddaughter Lamira were on a road trip from New Jersey to North Carolina to visit family members for the Christmas holidays. The roads were iced over, and Barbara had to do most of her traveling in the darkness. On the journey, CCTV footage captured the moment that they'd entered a gas station, which was on a Saturday at 5:40 p.m. It also captured them leaving just before 6 p.m. It appeared that there had been some sort of error along the journey, and Barbara had made a turn down a small road in Dinwiddie County, Virginia. She carried on along this road until she drove over a small tree, which subsequently caused her car to become stuck. It was decided that they would wait patiently for another car to come by and ask for help, since it was too cold for the two to search for help. A few hours went by and no one had come to their rescue. The road on which they were stuck was about a mile from a paved road, and they were unaware of this at the time. A few days had passed and the two were still stranded in the car. Luckily, there were bottles in the car that the two could melt snow in as a source of water. They also had a few snacks with them, but by now those had run out. Barbara began to grow very tired due to insufficient food as well as the cold weather. The family in North Carolina grew worried after the two had not shown up at their house, and so they reported them missing. Search teams were arranged to search for any crashes, and helicopters did the rounds in search of the missing pair. At one point, one of the helicopters had flown over the exact area where they were located, but the woodland was far too thick and blocked their view of anything below. This is when authorities later checked the CCTV footage at the gas station, which revealed their general direction, but no one thought that Barbara would turn off the route and head down an unfamiliar road. 4 days after their initial disappearance, the owner of a nearby property had come across the vehicle and found Barbara unconscious, with Lamira perfectly fine, both sitting against a tree. It was discovered that Lamira had fed her great-grandmother, as well as kept her warm during the few days that they were missing. Although 4 days doesn't sound like a lot, in the middle of winter it was crucial for both a young girl and an elderly woman. Barbara was transported to VCU Medical Center in Richmond via helicopter, where she was put on the list of serious conditions. An investigation was carried out to determine what had happened. It appeared that Barbara had pulled off the dirt road into the woods before driving over a small tree and getting stuck. She had then attempted to reverse but only wedged the vehicle further. The vehicle they were in was found parked 1.5 miles from the main road and 45 feet from the dirt road. The elderly woman and her great-granddaughter had been discovered 50 yards away. Sergeant Steve Vick of the Virginia State Police had stated that it appeared that the two had been sustained on juice boxes, apples, and a few other items. He explained that they had been eating as well as drinking throughout the several days that they'd been stranded. It appears that they had both been found miraculously just in time. Otherwise, Barbara may not have made a full recovery. The two relatives appeared to have saved each other. It's suspected that Barbara was keeping young Lamira fed while she was slowly losing energy over the 4 days, which is when the young girl possibly stepped in and kept the elderly woman warm and safe, until they were finally rescued by sheer chance. If the owner of the property that the vehicle was parked on had not ventured out and discovered it, the two may not have been alive today. Barbara did make a full recovery, and Lamira was unharmed and returned to her family after a brief checkup. The family is not certain why Barbara would have turned down that unfamiliar road, since she had traveled that route various times for many years. They've stated that she has no known medical conditions as well. Number 4. After only a month of knowing one another, Craig Dwight Williamson, who was 46 at the time, married Christine Reinhardt, who was 41, at Lake Tahoe on the 7th of September in 1990. The newlyweds bought a farm in Wisconsin where they started to raise tilapia, with the idea to sell them around the country. On the 28th of August, 1993, Craig went on a trip to Colorado Springs to sell some fish. A few weeks prior to this, he had a concussion, and Christine was worried about the drive for this reason. Upon his arrival in Colorado Springs, Craig rented a car for his business appointments. On the 30th of August at 9 p.m., he had spoken with Christine on the phone from a hotel that he was staying at. This would be the last time that she would hear from her husband. He was due to return to Wisconsin the following day, but never arrived. That same day, his credit cards had been found in El Paso, Texas, which is 675 miles from Colorado. 2 weeks had gone by, and the car he was using was found abandoned across the Juarez-Mexico border, but no foul play was suspected by authorities. The investigation of Craig's disappearance was led by Detective Robert Johnson, while Christine began her very own search in her husband's mysterious disappearance. On the 14th of September, she had made her way to the hotel where Craig was staying. This is where she found that he had left all of his possessions, but there were no signs of a struggle or any evidence that foul play had occurred. Although there was no evidence that anything bad had happened to Craig, Christine still believed that he had been attacked after wandering off to an unknown area, due to the concussion that he sustained weeks prior. After some news reports were issued on television, a retired nurse named Judy Inman from Montana had come forward with a clue. Judy had been making the journey on a train from Montana to Washington, 2 weeks after Craig's initial disappearance. She recalled that on the train there was a man who kept rambling about fish tanks, and stated that the fish were from outside of the United States. Judy was an experienced nurse, and deduced that the man had suffered from a head injury. After hearing this, Christine believed that the man was in fact her husband, and he was traveling to Washington because this is where the two had originally met one another. For the next 6 weeks, Christine would be on a manhunt where she would stop at each location where the train had stopped when Judy and Craig were on board. Judy and Christine had met up as well to discuss the ordeal and what the man had looked like. The description detailed a person who resembled Craig. His son had also put up some missing person posters, but to no avail. During this time, Christine believed that her long-lost husband was still alive. The story became popular when it aired on Unsolved Mysteries on the 25th of May, 1994. This led to no leads though until it was broadcasted a second time, which had actually led to the case being solved. In July of 1995, when that episode was re-aired, Craig had fortunately seen it and recognized himself. He had been residing in Key West, Florida, where he worked as a diver. He explained that when he was in Colorado Springs, he had been mugged and then developed amnesia, which was further worsened by the previous head injury that he'd suffered weeks before the trip. Craig didn't remember a lot about the assault and woke up later in a hospital thinking that his name was Ron. Craig stated that after this, he had roamed around Key West until he eventually got a job as a diver. He later made contact with Christine as well as his ex-wife. His manager, Bob Ming, stated that he would retell the story of how he was assaulted to anyone that would listen. But sadly, the long-lost Craig Williamson did not remember his wife or his family, but was reunited with Christine in a matter of days. The couple then traveled to Colorado Springs in an attempt to jog Craig's memory, which proved futile. Since he was unable to remember the life that he had with Christine, the two decided to divorce and went their separate ways, but remained friends. Craig had gone to California where he would stay with some friends while Christine began a new life in Wyoming. The investigators who were involved in the case are not entirely convinced of Craig's claims, and believe that he staged this act in order to start a whole new life. Nevertheless, Craig Williamson was able to solve his own disappearance, thanks to the help of his story being broadcast on television. No one would have expected him to find himself and return to his family, especially not after a few years of him being missing. Number 3. In March of 2021, 33-year-old Sarah Everett had gone missing when she was walking home in South London. It was a Wednesday on the 3rd of March when Everett had left a friend's house in Clapham at around 9 in the evening. A few minutes past 9, she had spoken with her boyfriend for a 14-minute phone call. She was then seen on CCTV alone at Bowood Road and South Circular Junction. At 28 minutes past 6, she could be seen walking on Cavendish Road and then was captured on a police officer's dash cam. Then a bus had picked up 2 individuals standing beside a white vehicle. 3 days later, on the 6th of March, the CCTV image of Everett was released to the public. Authorities stated that she had walked through Clapham Common and that the journey should have taken about 50 minutes. The next day, doorbell footage was then released which showed the woman walking on Poinders Road to Tulse Hill. The investigation was then being led by Scotland Yard's Specialist Crime Common, due to the nature of the complexity of the case. That Monday, it was revealed that the police had received over 120 phone calls regarding the case and have submitted dashcam, doorbell, and other relevant footage. Sniffer dogs were used in tracking Everett's scent, while drains and ponds were also searched. More images of the missing woman were then released, which showed what she'd been wearing at the time of her disappearance. It was later discovered that one of the witnesses had seen Everett being arrested by a Met police officer named Wayne Cousins, and dashcam footage confirmed it. It was later determined that Cousins had arrested Everett on false allegations of breaking COVID rules or assisting an offender. Upon viewing more CCTV footage, it was determined that Cousins did not use a registered police vehicle, but had actually rented a car. On the 5th of March, Cousins reported to his workplace that he was suffering from stress, and at 2 p.m. on that day, he had purchased green trash bags. It was then discovered that he emailed his work stating that he no longer wanted to carry a firearm, and also bought a tarp and a cargo net. On the 9th of March, Cousins was arrested on suspicion of kidnapping Everett, all due to the CCTV footage and dashcam that captured him making the arrest of Everett in the first place. An investigation was done into the officer, and it was discovered that in 2015, Kent police did not investigate an incident where Cousins indecently exposed himself in public. In February of 2021, it was found that he was linked to 2 more reports of indecent exposure, which was also not investigated by authorities. On the 3rd of March, at 38 minutes past 11, Cousins had successfully managed to get Everett into his car, where he then drove her to a rural area and took her life. In the early morning hours, Everett was placed into Cousins' actual car. At 21 minutes past 3 in the morning, the car could be seen on another CCTV camera in the vicinity of Hodes Wood. This is where Everett's body was later found. He visited the scene twice and left the area before dawn. At 8:30 in the morning, the rented car had been returned. Everett was only reported missing on the 4th of March by her boyfriend, Josh Loth. On the 8th of March, Cousin was due to report back to work, but he called in sick, and the following day, all the data was deleted from his phone. It was too late by this time, as all the CCTV footage, doorbell videos, and dash cams had already incriminated Cousin enough. On the 9th of March, Cousin was arrested, and the body of Everett was found at a property that he had owned. On the 12th of March, the offender was charged and pleaded guilty to homicide, and on the 30th of September, he was sentenced to life in prison without parole. If it was not for the numerous witnesses, various CCTV footage, dash cams, and doorbell videos, then Cousin may have never been caught in relation to the crime, and Everett would not have been found. Number 2. On the 28th of April in 1997 in South Africa, a girl was born to Celeste and Morn Nurse. Celeste had a C-section and had been in recovery, and recalls that a woman dressed as a nurse had attended to the newborn baby as Celeste had fallen asleep. Once Celeste had woken up, she realized that both her newborn baby as well as the nurse had disappeared. The baby was named Zephanie, and police were alerted immediately. It was speculated that the woman who took the baby had faked her pregnancy in order to escape with her. This was later confirmed by the discovery of a pillow in the access tunnel situated under the hospital. It was later determined that this nurse had made a few visits to the hospital, but had gone undetected and even spoke to expecting mothers. Throughout the years that followed, the family tried their best to keep this case in the eyes of the public, should any new leads arise. They'd even celebrated Zephanie's birthday, as well as attended interviews with various news stations. The family of baby Zephanie believed that she was still alive. In 2009, some individuals had been convicted of extortion after they'd tried to bribe nurses with money in exchange for any information on where Zephanie could be. Celeste and Morn had 3 more children in the years that followed. This included a daughter named Cassidy, 2 sons, Joshua and Michael. Unfortunately, the pair divorced later on due to the pressure of the case, and Cassidy felt as though she had to hold the whole family together when she was just 15 years old. With the addition of Cassidy, the case could finally be solved in a rather unexpected way. In January of 2015, Cassidy began to attend high school. While at school, friends of Cassidy's began to comment on how much she and another student resembled one another. Surprisingly, Zephanie, who was now 17 years old, was attending this same school, though she was going by a different name, and friends had made comments about how the two looked alike. The two girls decided to reach out to one another and became friends. In an interview, Zephanie had stated that when she saw Cassidy, she instantly felt a strange connection and said that this was most likely due to the resemblance that they had when she had been 14 years old. When word reached Cassidy's father, he asked her to bring the girl over so that he could meet her. When the two met, Morin informed the police. An investigation proceeded from there, and the people claiming to be Zephanie's parents couldn't produce a birth certificate or any other evidence that would lead anyone to believe that they were her biological parents. A DNA test was carried out, confirming that the two girls were in fact related. Subsequently, Zephanie was removed from her home and sent to social services, where the nurse family and she could adjust. Unfortunately, Zephanie did not feel the same connection with her real parents as she did with Cassidy, and ultimately decided to remain with her non-biological parents. The kidnapper was identified as Lavona Solomon. It's believed that she had a miscarriage at the hospital and further faked the pregnancy in order to successfully steal Zephanie. There were mixed reactions following Lavona's arrest, which occurred in August of 2016, and she was convicted of kidnapping and fraud, as well as violating the Children's Act. She was sentenced to 10 years in prison. Lavona's husband, Michael, was not convicted since he played no part and seemingly didn't know of the kidnapping. During this trying time, Zephanie turned to him since he was the only father she ever knew. During the courtroom battles, both Morin and Celeste were made out to be the ones in the wrong, rather than the victims of losing their daughter when she was born. Morin was even accused of using the situation for financial benefit. It would take the parents 17 years to get justice for the disappearance of their child, but the pain of not knowing what had happened to her was replaced with the pain of being rejected, since Zephanie understandably chose the only family she knew over her biological one. Number 1. A strange way of solving cold cases has recently risen in prisons across the world. The solutions to some old cold cases that authorities have been struggling to solve found themselves onto playing cards. The idea was inspired by personality identification playing cards that had been used by the government in 2003, which were used for identifying members of Saddam Hussein's government that were wanted by authorities. This would include printing the faces and names of victims involved in cold case crimes. This game was used to potentially jog the memories of prisoners, which would hopefully lead to solutions or tips. The cards, which would usually display a king or queen or other icon, would be replaced with pictures of the victims, a short description, and their names, as well as a reward that was offered. There were various playing cards of this nature distributed throughout the states, such as New York, Idaho, Florida, Colorado, and South Carolina. The intention was that the inmates would indulge in a game of cards, and as they played, they might potentially recognize information or images of the victims showcased. With the addition of a reward, it was expected that some inmates may prove useful. One example of one of the distributed card decks was a Joker playing card, which listed that all tip-off phone calls would remain confidential, and a number was added at the bottom. This card would also state that the individual would not have to provide their name. Numerous cases have been solved using the cold case card program, although there's not enough national data to prove its success. One such instance occurred in 2007, when a game of Go Fish had been introduced to a Florida jail, which incredibly led to a tip from an inmate that actually solved a cold case that left investigators stunned for 3 years. In April of 2015, it was found that the Colorado Bureau of Investigation had gained over 60 tips from prisoners that used the cold case playing cards. The Department of Corrections, as well as the Connecticut Chief State Attorney's Office, had introduced a game of cards showcasing 52 individual card cases and missing person cases into a prison, which led to the closing of 20 of those cases. When it came to the case of Patricia Berry, a missing female, it was listed that an arrest had been made following the release of her case in a prison via the card game. Another arrest was documented when it came to Tracy Brazel, another missing female. Susan Schwartz found her case solved by the inmates as well, and along with this, another person was located, having gone missing, and many more arrests have been made since the introduction of the cards. Danny Doherty, detective superintendent, stated that the inmates in prisons usually talk about their crimes among one another. With the addition of these card games and rewards, they may recall a certain detail that another inmate had told them and tip off the authorities. Doherty had also stated that they hoped that the cards would spark new leads, as well as circulate crucial information. This method saw a lot of success across the United States and led to solving many cold case crimes and even helped locate missing people who were found alive. This kind of method is certainly not something that one would expect to occur within a prison. It was also added that the families of the victims who had been represented on the cards were also involved in their production, and this led these families to closure and got them as well as the victims the justice they deserved. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you liked this video, be sure to hit that like button. Also, don't forget to subscribe and click that notification bell to keep up to date with all of our future uploads. But my name is Ty Knotts, and I'll catch you guys in the next video.